glutamate, free glutamate. The longer you boil the bones, the more free glutamate comes out of the bones. So there are certain subset of population that can't tolerate glutamate, and even autistic children have a problem with glutamate. Many do. And for those individuals, my recommendation would be to you boil it maybe only an hour or two, so you don't create as much free glutamate in the broth. And you also put more meat in it and less bones. The meat's going to give it flavor, and the bones is where all of that glutamate comes. And then you slowly, progressively move. You know, an autistic child that we've put on or frequently recommended the GAPS diet, which has actually been very successful with a lot of autistic children. However, it's sort of contradictory, because you're thinking, well, you're giving these children glutamate because bone broth is a huge component of this diet. But you start off really slowly. You start off with, as I said, you just boil it for an hour or so, and then you move into, you know, the more traditional broths where you're boiling it more for 4 to 6 hours or 8 hours. Chicken and turkey, you boil for maybe 4 to 6 hours. It's all on the sheet that I have provided. Fish, you don't need to boil as long, for maybe 1 or 2 hours. Beef, you can go overnight, 24 hours, to really extract all the good stuff out of those bones in the marrow.
And that goes for leaky gut in general. You hear this term bandied around about your gut dysfunction. It doesn't matter what disease you have. If you have a leaky gut, you do not want to start with a full brew. You want to start at the 1 to 2 hour while you're doing your elimination of the foods that are triggers until you heal the gut, and then you can start progressing into the longer and longer brews and get more glutamine, and then it's actually helpful at that point because your gut's not leaking.
Yeah, and you know, you might have heard of many glutamine supplements, because once again, we like to extract the good things that we think are good out of foods, and then we like to put them in a supplement form and say, here, take this, and you're going to heal your gut, and you're going to heal this and heal that. But once again, it's the synergistic properties of what we're creating here, like with everything here. You know, you can take a probiotic supplement, but like Chris was saying, you know, you think about the billions of colonies you're getting on top of the fermented foods. I'll also say this. I forgot to say that by creating this broth, it also helps the digestibility of meats and legumes and beans and grains. So if you're making, let's say, a beef barley soup, well, guess what? Barley may not have been, you may not be able to tolerate even the barley grain. But if you make it with the soup, it's going to help it digest those proteins and help you digest them better. Same thing goes for beans, same thing goes for the meat. So it makes sense if you're making split pea soup with a ham hock. There's a reason for that ham hock. It's to help digest and break down those peas so that you can better absorb the nutrients that are in them. So there's really a purpose for everything. What? Is it ready? Ah, it's ready. Okay.
As you can tell, who makes the ghee?
Okay.
So anyone want to drink casein?
Yeah, so you see it looks, it's all cloudy and thick and sort of yucky. And then this, if you can see it, is, see how it's translucent. You can see right through it. Everybody see that? Yeah. So now you know it's ready. And if you let it go a little bit longer, it even gets like this nice hue, this little orangish hue. So now we very carefully strain this. Yeah, you know, you can if you're not bothered by it. You can reuse it for other things if you want, but the whole purpose is sort of to get rid of that irritating protein. It solidifies, yeah, a little bit. We keep ours on the counter. I mean, this can keep up to a year, I've read, so on the counter. I mean, it's quite shelf stable. Yeah. Yes.
All the time. Unless they have a whey protein sensitivity.
Yeah. Depends on what's going on.
And that's very rare.
Okay. So bone broth. It does. Once it cools, it won't get hard, but it'll get more solidified. Yeah.
It's kind of like yellow Crisco.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if I'm making eggs, I'll put some of that in there, and I'll even put it on, some bread or what, just like you would use a butter or anything. The great thing about ghee now is that I don't know if you ever cook with butter, but it burns so easily when you cook with it, and that's why you can combine it with some olive oil, and then It can raise the temperature heat or the temperature of your cooking, whatever you're cooking. The great thing about ghee is that it has a really high smoke point, so you can do high heat cooking with that, and that's the beauty. I love cooking with ghee. I pretty much cook either with ghee, coconut oil, or olive oil on very low temperatures.
And understanding again that fats are good for us. You know, if you talk about a ketogenic diet, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of a ketogenic diet. You know, it's a diet that originally was thought of for kids with intractable seizures. You know, we give them 3, 6, 7 different medicines and nothing stops their seizures. You put them on a ketogenic diet, which means they have no sugar. They have no glucose in their diet. So what happens is the body then says, I'm going to break down fats and produce ketones. And those ketones actually cross into the brain, and that's used as a major fuel source for the brain. It actually is neuroprotective. There's actually very good research looking into ketone states of ketone in your blood as a health property. And so lots of folks will actually put ghee, coconut oil, and different things in their diet. So example, people put that in their coffee, and periodically I actually will take coffee, put a teaspoon of ghee, put a teaspoon of coconut oil, add some cinnamon, add some other stuff, and down the hatch. And tastes delicious. And you're getting things that your body really wants. It sounds a little crazy, but it's actually really good.
There's a company that makes a product called coconut ghee, which is a mixture of coconut oil and grass-fed cows. Pretty awesome, actually. You use that to cover your cooking needs, your coffee needs. And I put coconut ghee in my coffee.
I thought.
Coconut ghee.
A farmer in Nebraska, actually. The coconut ghee, you buy it, essentially by the gallon. It's good stuff. It's from grass-fed cows.
And so you see the common theme here in everything we're making really is gut healing. Because the biggest problem with modern America, and frankly all modern societies right now, is gut dysfunction. And that gut dysfunction is primarily an issue with bad bugs. You know, for those of you who've heard our lectures before, there's many different ways to mess up your gut. The most important way and the most dangerous one is American-style diet. Flour, sugar, and poor quality fats. Those are the ones that are really messing us up. Then other things that really mess us up is being born by C-section. All children who are born by C-section have an increased risk of disease because they're getting exposed to the wrong bacteria from the skin instead of the bacteria that you normally get from the vagina. Then if they don't breastfeed, they're not getting good bugs from the mom's breast. Instead, again, they're getting bugs that are related to the nipple, which is, again, skin bugs, and then bugs that are related to the cow's milk. And for anyone who doesn't know this, little kids are not little baby cows. I mean, so we shouldn't be doing that, but yet we still do this. And now there's independent evidence that each one of these mistakes is causing problems to our gut. And then the final and biggest nightmare actually has been the modern use of antibiotics. One of the greatest inventions of all time is becoming one of our greatest curses. And the overuse of antibiotics for the last 40 years between husbandry and animal farms that figured out a long time ago that if you give a cow, when they're very young, feed that has antibiotics in it, they'll grow longer. And why do they grow bigger? Why do they grow bigger? Because you're altering the gut flora, and those gut flora become then abnormal, and they make them gain weight. Very similar to what you see in modern American populations. The abnormal gut microbiome is dysfunctionally making us get fatter and unfortunately less healthy. And so that combination is what I call the recipe for disaster. And then there's other things in there too, but if you've been born by C-section, you're given lots of antibiotics, you weren't breastfed, you're in trouble.
Well, the other issue is, too, farmers call antibiotics a fat pill. They were initially used for fat equipment. Farmers, antibiotics are called a fat pill. 80% of antibiotics in the United States are used on livestock. Fatten them up. We're all wringing our hands. What are you going to do about these super bacteria, these antibiotic-resistant drugs? And the antibiotic-resistant bugs, many of them are coming from the way we treat our livestock. That's where... Go ahead. Oh, I'm back on now. But yeah, there's the fat pill is what antibiotics do. The way it disturbs your gut flora, lets the bad guys take over and influences the way you burn fat, carbohydrates, and proteins, basically.
So what do you have in there?
Yeah, what are you doing over there?
You've
Okay.
been doing a lot of stuff, and nobody knows what's going on.
I know. Well, see, the real deal is I'm making my sauerkraut now, and I'm really just cutting all this stuff up for show. You can just use a food processor and you'd be done in 5 minutes. Bzz, 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 bzz.
Yeah, but that's boring.
Yeah. So sauerkraut is basically just, I mean, it's fermented cabbage, but, and you know, a lot of times when you're getting into doing things like this, geez, what's the recipe? What am I going to do? How am I going to do this? Do whatever you want, experiment. And what I have right here is garlic, two heads of garlic, carrots, ginger, red onions, green and purple cabbage, basically. And there's 3 ways to basically get this to ferment or to make probiotics. One way is what's called wild fermentation. All of this produce has bugs on it. So you can just cut it all up, and what you're going to see me do in a minute is just smash it up with my hands. Now, if you do use a food processor, you don't even have to smash it up with your hands because it liquefies it, basically. So there's wild fermentation, which you just stuff it into a jar tight, and what I use is what's called a perfect pickler. Basically, it's an airlock lid. They sell these at Simply Good if anyone's interested in doing this, but the fermentation process releases gas, so that gas has to be released. You fill this little thing with water, and you'll see me packing this stuff in when I do, but a perfect pickler. You could easily, just as well use a little upside-down coffee filter. But so you throw all your vegetables in, again, whatever you want. If you want to make kimchi, use a lot of red pepper. I once bought some cute orange peppers at Harris Teeter. I didn't know what they were. I'll throw some peppers in. Yeah, they were habaneros. So I learned something with that particular batch. I just thought they were cute little orange peppers. So, and what you do after you put all your vegetables in a bowl, you salt them pretty heavily, because what salt does is it brings the water out, kills any of the bad bacteria, and it's part of the fermentation process. So the 2 salts I recommend generally are Celtic sea salt or Himalayan salt. So I mentioned there's three ways to seed this. Wild fermentation, where you seed it with whatever's on it. You can make your own whey, and what I've done here is, you know, I took this lap from someone's surgery. They didn't need it. They didn't need it to sop up any blood, but it's basically cheesecloth. So you put some yogurt in a little cheesecloth, hang it down, and you can see there's fluid dripping down here. That's whey. And so what I can do is use this whey and pour it in there, and so that will inoculate it with lactobacilli, which is one of the good probiotics that you want. So you can inoculate it with whey. If you do wild fermentation and you don't inoculate it with anything, it takes a little longer to start the fermentation process. Or the other option is to use a starter, basically. This is kinetic culture, and this one has particular bacteria that produce higher amounts of vitamin K. I'm a huge vitamin K fan, vitamin K2. So this is a starter that I bought. There's different companies that make starters, but so I sprinkle some of this in, and I use salt. I started out mostly just using whey. Just take any yogurt you have in the refrigerator, put it in a cheesecloth, let it hang down, and then you have cheese here up top too that you can eat afterwards if you want. So I'll sprinkle a little bit of this starter on here, and what you'll see me doing next basically is just squeezing the heck out of this to get the juices flowing, and following that, I'll just pack it all into this jar, and when this is full, I will sit it onto my counter for 10, 14, 30 days, whatever. It doesn't really matter as long as you create a fluid level that the vegetables can stay under, and the way you create that fluid level, you pack it tight. I brought a little thing to jam it in there, and I'll show you how this works once I actually do it, but that's how they used to store food before they had refrigerators. And the reason it doesn't rot is because the pH and the good bacteria that are in there prevent the bad bacteria from taking over. If you just put this on the counter...